Hey guys, Jeremy S. from T-Tag here, thetruthaboutguns.com, out in the woods of Idaho with a cool new product called the Mantis. It may look like a rail-mounted laser or flashlight, but actually what this thing has in it is a bunch of gyroscopes. And it measures the movement of your pistol or other gun. It can go on anything with a rail. As you know, to make an accurate shot, you have to break that trigger with no movement in the sights. Once those sights are lined up and you're squeezing that trigger, you want to break it as cleanly as possible. Some people practice this dry firing by putting an empty shell, a piece of brass on top of their gun, hold it out and break that trigger. And if you do it smoothly, you're not moving that muzzle around. And of course, trigger control like that, having a great, nice, clean trigger pull is one of the keys to good accuracy. And this thing, working with an app, works with any iOS or Android device. That's where you get all the information. It logs your history of all the shots that you take, and it gives you tips, really in detail tips about what you're doing wrong, how that muzzle is moving right before the shot. So it's logging those milliseconds right before the trigger breaks and the shot happens. Movement forwards, backwards, left, right, up, down, all those different angles. And from that it can tell, you know, you're putting too much finger on the trigger, you are anticipating recoil, you're breaking your wrist too easily, you have too much support arm going into it, you're increasing your grip tension right before the break, all those sorts of things. You know those targets that there's a bullseye and then around all the bullseye there's different like quadrants, and it shows you, same thing, what you're doing wrong, why are you low left every time, and maybe that's anticipating recoil and you're pushing and you're diving that muzzle. This is basically the same thing, but it gives you the tips, it shows you in the app, very detailed, exactly what's going on, and it also logs your history. So you can see how you're improving. It gives you a score between 0 and 100. You know, in theory, you put this thing in a ransom rest, pull the trigger, it's gonna give you a 100 because it didn't move at all. And if you're, you know, jerking, it's gonna give you 50 or something. And you can see how you go through your history of shooting, how you're improving, and what your problem points are. And the idea, of course, is to make you a better shooter. So let's put a few rounds to this just to see how it works, and then basically I'm going to narrate as I show you what's on my phone so far that I've saved over the course of the last couple of months that I've been playing with this guy. Okay, when you start at the app, it has you put your gun down on a solid surface so it can calibrate it nice and still. Okay, I'm going to push start. I'm going to take one shot here, and then we're going to look at the app because it will tell me after every single shot what happened. So that said breaking wrist up, and indeed I was kind of relaxed. I wasn't really locked into that one. It shows the hit slightly above the center there in that top zone. And now if you want to know more, you click on breaking wrist up and it tells you a bunch of information about what that actually means. So to keep track of these next shots, I'm going to run through another 4. Alright, my score that time was 88.6, which is good but not great. The most recent one was too little trigger finger. Shows me a graph of all 5 of those shots. Click on that to find more, what too little trigger finger means. And that was the most common one. I had 2 over there, but if I click this one, that says thumbing. If I click this one, tightening fingers. I was tightening while I was shooting. And up here, that was my breaking wrist up. Over here, too little trigger finger. So it shows you what's going on. Let's do 5 more shots. Okay, we have 2 up and to the right now. That's anticipating recoil. 1 down, what is that? Breaking wrist down. So anyway, you can see all these shots, what I did wrong, and then what I can do from here is go to stats, see my whole history. So the history can show in a bar graph, can show in a pie chart. You can see all this information it tells you, and you can see your trend over time. And according to this, even though I was screwing around with it on purpose and flinching a bunch just to see what it would say, my most common thing is breaking my wrist up. I do that 26% of the time. Over on the pop-up menu on the left, you have train, stats, and learn. We just looked at stats. Learn shows you that graph, that target. You can choose different parts of the target and it'll tell you which part equates to which thing that you're doing wrong. You go to train, of course, that's where you start shooting. And then settings, you can set it for right-handed shooter or left-handed, live fire or dry fire, whether the mount is facing forwards or backwards, and all sorts of things. And then you can clear your stats, of course, so you can start all over. This is a short video overall on the MantisX. It works. It is dead on. I know when I do something on purpose, it catches it. It seems to get even really minor things like how much finger is on the trigger, and I dig it. It works. The only complaint I have about it is it's super sensitive. I mean, if I put this thing on a sandbag rest and I am really careful with my shots and I break the trigger without moving the gun at all, and I put a teeny tiny group on the bullseye, it's still gonna tell me that I'm doing things a little bit wrong, and I'm gonna get like a 95% on it. I think they could knock it down just a little bit, so when you're doing good, you're shooting bullseyes, it's saying good, you know, great shot, great shot. I got a few of those great shots, but not a lot, even from a sandbag. I think that great shot could be a little easier to get, and I'm not just complaining, but I mean, if it's shooting bullseye, 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 you're doing well, right? So I'd give that 100 a little bit easier, knock the threshold down just a touch, but still the information that it gives you is correct. I can't argue with that. It's a cool little unit. It's about 149 bucks, I believe, and it is going to be a handy training tool for classes, for people who go out shooting and want to improve themselves. It basically, yeah, it's 150 bucks, and it does the same thing as that target that shows you where you're off, except it shows you the score is helpful and the history. You can see how you're improving over time, and you can see what you do the most. It'll say 27.5% of the time you are anticipating recoil. So that's really valuable for 149 bucks. Yeah, that's awesome. It's a great training tool. I think it can make me a better shooter. It can make anyone a better shooter. Trigger control is about as important as it gets. You've got sight alignment and then pulling the trigger without moving the gun. And if you can do those two things, you're gonna shoot accurately. So check out the Mantis, link below or here or something. Check out the review on thetruthaboutguns.com, and I'll see you guys out in the woods next time.